Hello, I'm 𝗧𝗵𝗲. I'm a partner at LYC Partners, an executive search and leadership advisory firm. I'm also the co-founder of The Council, a private network for senior executives. And this is Leaders in Motion.
Most companies I talk to think that they have a GTM problem. Wrong positioning, wrong segment, wrong message. But today's guest is going to make a very different argument, that your GTM is probably fine and it's your sales system that's quietly killing it. I'm 𝗧𝗵𝗲, this is The Council, and my guest today is Romka from GrowWise, based in Singapore. Welcome, Romka.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me today, and I am absolutely delighted to talk through some of the myths that sales leaders and CEOs, I think, have regarding go-to-market strategy and their sales engine that underlies it.
Great. Before we go into and we unpack the content to help sales leader, maybe you can give a little bit of a background of yourself as an advisor and also of your company.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. So my name is Romka, and I am the Managing Director of GrowWise Solutions. We are an all-around fractional Chief Revenue Officer agency. We help organizations to architect their revenue engine in a way that it brings the maximum revenue growth year over year and produces results with whichever goals you set for yourself, be it financial goals or exit or funding. We help founders and CEOs to achieve those goals through augmenting their sales and revenue engine.
That's great. So you must see a lot of challenges when it comes to sales leader.
Absolutely. And, in our work, we speak very often with CEOs and founders of SME and mid-market organizations, very often as well with CROs and heads of sales of enterprise organizations. And consistently, we see a lot of the same problems. And one of those problems is very often the misconception that leaders and CEOs have that go-to-market is broken. Oh, there's something wrong with my strategy, but they don't really look under the hood of their sales system. And the truth is that if the sales system that supports go-to-market is broken, the go-to-market strategy is not going to work. So strategy is great, and it has to be there, absolutely, and it needs to be detailed, and it needs to be ordered and clear. But it's only as good as the infrastructure underlying is. So it cannot be just on paper. So that's what I'm hoping to talk to you about today.
I would be very curious to hear about what you mean by system. I think a lot of founders that I talk to, and also in our firm, talking about system can sound, when it comes to sell, a little bit too premature, but I'm pretty sure that this is something that is relevant for a good sales performance and results. But yeah, I'll let you explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's very consistent to what we are seeing as well when we are working with CROs and we're working with CEOs and founders. It's the execution system problem, not so much the go-to-market. The go-to-market probably a little bit as well, to make sure that it's detailed and clear enough that it doesn't leave any doubts for sales reps and sales leaders and in an organization. But it is actually how reps execute on that go-to-market strategy day to day. That is the main problem. Because, for example, you can have clear ideal customer profile. You can have strong positioning. You have defined your segments, but you're still missing the revenue, and you're wondering what actually is happening. Why am I losing revenue, or why am I not growing the 20, 30, 40% year on year that I would like to? And the thing is that strategy will define where to play, but it's the actual system, it's the execution, the everyday repeatable number of steps that your sales reps and your sales leaders are following that defines whether you're going to win or not. I kind of think about 4 elements here. It's a little bit like a table. If one leg breaks, the whole table is wobbly. So number 1 is going to be about prospecting being aligned to your ideal customer profile. So having that definition of ideal customer profile is key. But are your reps really following the ICP? Do they contact the right people? That's the question number 1. That's the pillar number 1. And then number 2, what happens after? Qualification discipline. So, qualifying deals in is as important as qualifying deals out. We're going to talk about it. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. Saying yes to something means also that you're saying no to something else. So, you need to be very clear about what you're letting into your pipeline. Then the third one will be about data and visibility. As leaders, as CEOs and founders, do we have a visibility and clarity around what are those segments that actually win? Are they aligned with ICP? Are they aligned with the strategy that we set? Maybe we are shooting in the wrong direction. And then the number 4, is going to be coaching and reinforcement that your sales leaders do with reps. Are they coaching? Are they teaching and showing according to the strategy that you've set out for the organization? Or are they just deal coaching? Now, that's the big question, right? So all these are not independent. They work together. One flows into another.
How does it look like on the ground? And when you mentioned ICP, and you also mentioned like the ones that we draw on paper, and the one that we actually operate on. How does it work, practically speaking?
Yeah. That's a great question. And this is where a lot of leaders of companies get lost. So they think, oh, my ICP is defined. But the question is it operationalized? So, for example, reps, do they usually go towards personas and people within the organizations that they are targeting that are easy to reach, or the right ones that we set out in our strategy? These are 2 different things, right? So having that clarity, who in an organization, in a target organization, feels the pain that our product or service is fixing, and who has the budget and authority to say yes to it and pay for it. So these will be 2 different people. And we always need to, as reps, be prepared to have a narrative towards the pain that we are fixing and talking to people who have the authority. Because we want to own the narrative, right? We don't want somebody else to sell for us on behalf of us to those people that actually take a decision. Another element is marketing and sales targeting misaligned. About this, we could probably do another whole episode. I can talk about this. And also lack of multi-threading. So multi-threading means that we are reaching out to multiple people within an organization, because we're going to have economic buyer, we're going to have the budget holder. They not always are the same person. We're going to have influencers who are influencing the decision on our deal, champions, blockers, coaches. So these may not be the same people. And the data shows that on average, there are 9 people that are taking part in a purchasing decision within an organization. Of course, it's across all segments. So you're going to have probably less, maybe 4 or 5 in an SME environment, and it can go up to 20 in enterprise segment. It did happen to me for sure. But the core point here is that it's not 1, it's not 2, it's more. So if your sales reps are going after that one person, that one main point of contact in an organization you're targeting as a prospect, that's already a red flag.
Sometimes it feels like it's more like of a strategy problem, but do you also feel like it could be a people problem?
I think so. I think strategy very often misses that. I think so. And, I think we are going back to kind of the main topic today, right? Like if the strategy is not executed on, if it just lives somewhere on the page, and people don't act according to it, then that's one big problem. So what execution would look like here, for example, is aligning KPIs between marketing and sales, for example, aligning on which prospects and accounts we are going after. That, like when I was just saying that 79% of marketing leads never convert into sales, that's probably because the leads are not within the ICP, or maybe they are within the ICP, but just sales is spending time somewhere else. So, there is that part, and there can be a people problem as well. But my view always is that people will do, within an organization, during their work. Nobody wants to be unsuccessful. People will do what they are measured upon. So KPIs misalignment is going to be a big one here. So if, for example, marketing is not KPI'd on anything relating to revenue, then that's already a red flag, right? So, or even, how leads convert, that's a misalignment over there. So it's usually how organizations build the strategy and how they execute it, and how does that translate then into behaviors every single day from marketing side and sales side in this particular example.
This marketing and sales connection seems to be critical in terms of in order to be aligned, in order to execute well. How do you see that, and how often do you see that these two functions being clustered? And
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, marketing comes up with an idea of running a prospect event, and they don't follow the ICP definition, for example. Right? It's just happened so many times. I've seen this happening so many times. The reps and the marketing are sending out invitations for the event to everybody and anybody without a clear strategy on who should come. They are not targeting the right accounts. They are not targeting the right personas. That's already a big one, right? So that's a misalignment between what the strategy says and what gets executed on the ground. And then, as a result of that, you have 79% of marketing leads that never convert into sales, right? So there you go. So that's one of those examples that I've seen over and over again.
I have a question more related to what is your take when it comes to volume of sales versus value? And like a lot of sales reps, they go for the low hanging fruits, not the ideal ICPs. How would you?
Well, it's probably short-lived, because you will never be able then, as an organization, sustain a consistent growth year on year if reps just go for what's easy. That means we are not maximizing where the revenue lies. Maybe we are, like if we are, great. But I'm talking about here, we are specifically talking about an example where reps are just going after what's easy, but not necessarily aligned with the strategy, right? So that's short-lived. It's going to probably win you a quarter or two. But the question is this a sustainable way of growth for the company that guarantees double-digit growth year on year? No, I don't think so. Because reps need to be very clear and kind of, I'm going to pull us into that, defining ICP, what it really is. They need to have the clarity of what pain points accounts have. This is key, because this is the premise of selling with value and not having transactional sales conversation. If the reps have a clear understanding of what pain points are addressed by the product or service they are selling, they will be able to show the customer the value of the product and service, and therefore avoid transactional conversations and selling with discounts. What follows that are buying triggers. So uncovering what is the actual need the client has. What is the urgency? How quickly do they need to resolve that problem? Can they quantify that problem? Those triggers are extremely important. And then who who is this that is going to take a decision? So here we are talking about specifics like title. For example, if this is a SaaS product, we will want to be talking to let's in HR tech, right? We will be wanting to talk to decision makers in HR team, potentially CHRO, and an IT team, right? So then we will need to be able to articulate very clearly what are their pain points and what are the triggers that they feel that are pushing them to make that change right now. And then when we have those three things very well defined, then the question is, where do we find them? What is the industry? So here we are talking about firmographics. So what is the industry that they sit in? Do they sit in a specific location? Do we want to go after, for example, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong? Or do we want to go after more countries, less countries? Why? What is the segment we are going after? Is our solution designed better for SMEs, mid-market companies, or enterprise, or maybe startups, and things like that? So once we have that, then we can clearly see where we are going to win. And that also will help to have a more value-based conversation rather than transactional selling, where, in transactional selling, reps, if they don't have that clarity, they will just go after reciting all the features, all of them. They will lead with product knowledge and they will be selling with discounts. And that's a problem because then there is an exposure. The average deal size goes down, right? If we value sell, which means we have clarity, who is our customer, what pain points they have, what are the triggers that they are using to make a purchase today, then that conversation starts being more around the value that the product and service delivers. Therefore, price is secondary. So these are the really important points that sales reps need to remember. So having that ICP in their mind and being able to execute during their selling time within the conversations with the right people from the ICP definition is crucial, as opposed to, going spray and pray.
We see also quite often the sales rep, but coming back to when I mentioned about the volume more than the value, incentives pushing, encouraging this type of behavior, which is a system problem. This is something that maybe you want to talk about.
That brings me kind of a little bit towards one of those 4 pillars that I just mentioned. And that one would be CRM and data visibility. The whole organization, really, starting from leaders through to sales reps, should have clarity from the data, hard data, about what converts, right? Do my spray and pray kind of a strategy converts? So, does it? Or do we actually have patterns? And to be honest with you, probably 100% of the time, we will be able to derive some patterns from the data. The data is going to be able to tell us retrospectively, where did we win best? Who did we sell to in those deals that converted? Where those deals come from? Which industry? Which segment? Who was the ICP over there? Who took a decision? Who paid for it? So, all those elements of ICP, this is all visible in the data. The problem is that a lot of organizations don't track that. The whole really magic, is going to be here to set up whichever CRM you have or spreadsheet or whatever, in a segmented way that tracks all this. So, like, which channels produce revenue? What industry works better? Like I mentioned, what are the conversion rates within those industry, within those segments of ICP we have defined? Maybe this happens sometimes as well. What data shows is slightly different to what go-to-market strategy shows, in which case then it's up to leaders in the organizations to tweak that go-to-market strategy and see if we can win more, if we really go according to those patterns that we see in the data. So data is super important. And if reps know as well, these are the deals, these are the industries, these are the locations, these are the titles of budget holder economic buyer that converted best in my pipeline last year, that's where I'm going to go this year as well. So it needs to be, my point here is it needs to be informed, needs to be systematic, it needs to be clear. It cannot be just, going after anything, because like I said at the beginning, nobody wants to be unsuccessful. So reps will also want to have quality pipeline, maybe 10 great deals in the pipeline, as opposed to 20 mediocre ones that are not going to convert really well.
Do you have do you think this is important also to incentivize on how well you're executing on the system?
That's a great question. Are you talking about simply maintaining the CRM hygiene? So look, I'm not sure if as a sales leader, I would want to incentivize through commission the CRM hygiene. Okay. At the end of the day, we also need to be very clear as leaders with our sales reps. What are the responsibilities of the role? And the truth is that the responsibility of the role, one of the responsibilities of the sales role, is to keep records in CRM of their activity. And here, company culture will come into play, the clarity around what's expected and also what's coached and reinforced by the sales leaders and the sales managers. Because the truth is that if they don't execute on that need of the company having true and fair system of record, reps will follow, but with different degree of commitment, right? So we're going to have reps probably who are committed to keeping a really high standard of CRM hygiene, and some that don't do it on the other extreme, and everything and anything in between. So the truth is that, in sales, like probably in any other role, what you can expect, what you inspect. And this is where the coaching and reinforcement comes in. This is where the sales managers need to be active, and they need to be, for example, doing deal reviews from CRM. When, and also do the deal reviews on the ICP that is in the strategy, and making sure, that they don't ask just the basic questions around deals about when is it going to close, on, or what was the proposal, what is the timeline. So these are basics, but what actually needs to come into a conversation is we're opening CRM, we're looking at the deals in CRM, making sure that those deals follow the right sales process. And we're going to talk about it in a minute as well, because that's also something that is very important. And really questioning, pressure testing. Is this the right ICP? Are we talking to the decision maker? Why? How do we know? Are we talking to the budget holder? Who is the budget holder over here? Who else is taking part in the decision process? Qualification evidence, for example. Should this deal be in discovery, or should it already be in negotiation, for example? So also challenging a little bit, why this account? Does it sit in the ICP? Is it in the right industry? Is it in the right location? Are we talking to the customer about the right pain points that we can confidently solve for them, and all that, So I think it lives with what gets inspected with sales reps, and then they will know, I will be asked about this. This is important. That kind of a reinforcement and coaching conversation also brings out priorities, right? This gets checked by my leaders every single week on a pipeline review or forecasting conversation. So I need to be prepared for that. When the organization leaders are very clear about it, and I always say that clarity is kindness, then, people will follow. Nobody wants to be unsuccessful. Everybody wants to do well in their job and be proud of what they do. So it needs to be, again, aligned as well organizationally. And it needs to follow closely what's in the go-to-market strategy.
That's this is important, therefore, to have like conversation and deep conversation about ICP, and also like revise them basically. Do you have a framework to follow for sales rep or for sales leader?
We're talking about qualification right now, which is one of those 4 pillars I spoke about. So, there are many. There is the old good band, there is MedPick and Spin and so many other ones. But I think that the most important piece is that there is an evidence-based sales process that has clear exit criteria for every sales stage, so that it sets the right standard and the same standard across the whole sales organization and creates understanding what a deal in SQL versus discovery versus negotiation versus contract send means, actually, so that we avoid a situation that rep A is going to put one deal into discovery stage and rep B would put that particular deal in negotiation already. That means we have a problem. The ideal situation is that it's the sales process and within the sales process, every single stage is defined so well, and it does have those exit criteria I spoke about, that it's clear for every single sales reps which deal belongs into which category in which sales stage, which in turn then really takes off a lot of pressure from reps have to figure out every single time. It happens automatically. And then they also have, the whole organization has clear data about which deals are where, the health of the pipeline as well. And also the other thing as well is clear disqualification criteria. And that's, I mentioned that at the very beginning. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, and we better spend those 24 hours in things that are meaningful and valuable to us. So if we are spending a number of hours at work as a sales rep or as a sales leader, it's better to be on deals that are going to convert, right? So not every single deal will deserve a place in the pipeline. And having that sales process with clear exit points is going to define also deals that don't belong there, deals that we say no to. Having ICP clearly defined also is going to help us qualify deals out and in and agree to spend time on that deal versus not spending time on some other deal, right? So again, the pain has to be real. The trigger needs to be there. It needs to be urgent. So the pain needs to be quantifiable. So reps need to be able to ask the right questions around what does it cost to an organization to not to fix that problem today in salaries, in productivity, in brand equity, in anything really. How is the decision process defined on the customer side? Does the rep know that they are talking to the right person? And what is the decision process in the organization? Do they know by when the customer needs to solve that problem? What happens if they don't solve that problem by that time? And do they have money for it really? Have they, excuse me, have they understood the size of the investment that needs to be put into tackling that particular problem? So the better, the faster and earlier the deal is qualified in on out, the better for the pipeline, because you always want the pipeline that is going to convert the highest.
Um, do you feel that these frameworks and this discipline, from the ICP clarity to the CRM and the qualification of the prospects, do you feel like this system is more suitable to startup companies, or how mature these companies?
My take is that the earlier you do it, the better for you as an organization. Having clarity of where to go to win, that's everything, isn't it? Isn't it why founders become founders? Because they want to be successful in selling to people, to organizations, whichever is B2B or B2C, is that not the underlying purpose to want to help others with the product or service that they have? So what happens if that mission is not fulfilled, if we're selling to the wrong people who are never going to buy, and then we can't grow. So I understand the need for some people, to want to be part of the startup environment because you get to wear many hats, you learn many things, is less structured, therefore more creativity comes into play. But I think as well, it's a myth. I think those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can have a really good system and still be creative, right? I call it a freedom of a framework. So the concept of freedom of a framework is that when you do things during your day, working day or personal life, whatever that is, that are repeatable enough, and you need to you don't have a framework and steps that you follow, and you need to figure it out every time. That means you're basic. That's a loss in time and effort and energy. Freedom over frameworks takes us out from have to figure it out every single time, and therefore probably expose ourselves on performing that particular task with different quality each time. So isn't it better to document it somewhere, in form of a checklist, for example, and forget about it? And the next time you have to do it, pick out the checklist and just go through the steps. Isn't that quicker? Isn't that standardized and guarantee the same quality every time? And that draws on the best practices. So isn't that guaranteeing more success? So I think, those two things, like I said, they are not mutually exclusive. And I think you can have a great structure for sales where you still have lots of room for creativity in the way you're going to talk to the customer, in the way you are discovering their pain points, in the way you are drawing out the value for them. I mean, that's one of those great things about sales, that every conversation with client is going to be slightly different. You won't always follow a script. You will be talking to individuals who have different agendas. They have different KPIs. Success in their roles looks a little bit differently. So we need to, as salespeople, be a little bit of psychologists and bring that out. So, there is a lot of room for creativity. And I strongly believe that systems and processes are not just designed for big organizations. If you want to grow as a startup, you should have one early. You should have clarity about your ICP. You should have clarity about your go-to-market strategy. You should go and hit where you're going to win the most, and this is how you're going to grow. This is how you're going to fulfill on your dream and purpose. And this is how you're probably going to maybe get some funding, exit, or whatever.
Yeah, that's great. I think then I assume we'll come to some conditions, and I see two, and maybe we can go through these two for the last two topics. One would be the hiring, because you're building a culture, right? Building a culture that's of good high achievers that will work within a system, that also enjoy the creativity and the freedom. So it's kind of also narrowing things down when it comes to the hiring, right? And also then when it comes to the coaching, how do you follow up on that culture? How do you build that on the ground? So maybe we can start with the first step, and then maybe you can tell me a little bit more about the second.
Yeah, that's a great question, and again, it comes back to that having that go-to-market strategy and being clear as a leader, what it is and where do we win, and taking a decision what we go after to win big, and that will dictate the profile, specifically in this particular case, of a salesperson we will want to hire. Who they need to be in aptitude and who they need to be in skills and attitude as well. Because if, for example, our ICP sits in enterprise business, then you want a profile who has sold to enterprise. If our ICP sits in SME, then you want a profile who sold to SME. That's just one simple example, but this is basically how it works. If there is a specific culture that we want to create, that people are responsible, they they respect our go-to-market strategy. We need that kind of a profile. We are looking for people who are driving towards excellence. That's the kind of aptitude example, right? So the go-to-market strategy plus the clarity around what culture as a leader do I want to create in an organization is going to dictate the profile of a salesperson we will want to hire. And that then we translate into clear job description. What that will mean, of course, that's a whole HR and recruitment and also, again, alignment, right? Internal alignment exercise that needs to be done in conjunction with sales leaders and CEO and founders about competencies we are looking for. So the sales competencies, but also relationship building competencies and culture. So this needs to be clearly defined, and from there we can derive, the type of recruitment process we want to follow. So that's kind of, that part around recruitment. What happens when they are already here? How are we going to onboard them? So again, coming back to that notion of execution on go-to-market strategy. So that go-to-market strategy doesn't live on paper. It lives in an organization. So do we teach? Then the question is, do we teach during the onboarding the right things? Do we teach the ICP? Do we give, system that sales reps can follow, clear sales process? Do we define for them how to qualify in and how to qualify out? And then, coming to that last element, what gets coached and reinforced by managers, first line managers with their reps? Do they lead by example themselves? Do they live the culture of the organization? Do they ask the right questions during pipeline reviews and forecasting, right? That are aligned with go-to-market strategy, that are aligned with ICP, and not just ask when the deals are going to close. So it's a whole kind of an organizational effort that comes into play for sales organization to be successful. And yes, there is that element of the profile, the definition of a profile we are looking for, and that starts with hiring.
Well, that's very, very interesting. I think it's related to coaching, right? So how do you nurture that and keep?
There's going to be a few elements that comes into that puzzle that are going above and beyond go-to-market strategy at this point, right? So having clarity is one thing, but being able to translate the go-to-market strategy and goals into communication that lands with people is another big element that leaders really should pay attention. So, there needs to be a vision and mission that leaders are able to clearly state, draw, and connect with every single individual in an organization. How does an individual know what impact they are making in an organization? So again, it comes back to that intrinsic motivation that all of us have, that where we want to be successful, we want to be proud of what we do. So, the question is, do your people have clarity about how they contribute to success of your organization? So communication, clarity of that communication around mission, vision, purpose, and go-to-market strategy is extremely important. That's one. And then number two will be, coaching and reinforcement. So do the leaders follow the go-to-market strategy and the culture? Do they lead by example? If they don't, then we have a problem. It's going to break. Then everybody below them sees, oh, those guys break the rules. That's allowed. So I don't have to follow either. So, so there is that whole thing around leading by example and being a leader as well. Leading with compassion as well, I think we are best versions of ourselves when we are listened to, when we can contribute, right? So that's leadership through compassion to me as well. That is extremely important part of every organization. Do we treat our people as people, and do we their input and genuinely look forward to what they have to say to make our organization better, or do we see them as a number on a spreadsheet and we just want them to deliver specific target? These are two very different perceptions of looking at an employee. So, that's really recognition and performance management is a big one as well. So as leaders, do we recognize the right behaviors and the right level of success? And on the other hand as well, what do we do when there is no performance? Is it fair? Is there a documented, again, kind of a system that leaders can follow in terms of performance management? Do they know how to hold that conversation? Do they document it? Is it going to be a surprise for someone to go on a performance improvement plan, for example, without any feedback prior? Red flag. So that's another. It's a complex puzzle.
I would like to, in just a few words, what is your take when it comes to when you have a good system? Should we, and what is the impact of implementing AI within that system? What do you think about how AI can help, and where it should maybe not help, and maybe we can conclude there.
I think that AI is not going to sell. It's not going to take over. It's not going to solely go and sell to people, because still, even in corporate world, selling decisions, buying decisions are still to some extent emotional decisions. And they require, especially in big sales, they require building trust and relationship. And AI cannot replace all that. So that's one thing. However, at the same time, I think that salespeople can become extremely much more productive with AI tools. And they absolutely should. And there are many today to be able to enable that, but it can be everything and anything from using a CRM with AI capabilities that is analyzing language and helping to fish out the right pain points and triggers. It can be, anything related to building proposals. It can be anything relating to writing emails as well, like, a well-structured, a well-constructed message to a customer could take a lot of time. And if you can use AI for that, it can help you and cut that time to the absolute minimum, which are, admin tasks that reps don't have to spend that much time on anymore. And it can add to their selling productivity, being in front of customers. So, for example, up until just a few years ago, all that was done manually. And that was hours and hours of work every single week, month, and year. That was going into hundreds of hours that now get cut to the absolute minimum, and those 3 hours now can be used to be in front of customers. So I think, that's the way to go with AI. Is there for a reason, and salespeople can, I think, are in a great advantage now to be able to use that to have right conversations with their buyers.
Romka, thank you very much. That was very dense. That was very insightful, and hopefully we can have another one on another topic around sales, go-to-market, and commercial excellence. Thank you very much, Romka. That was great to have you.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin, and hopefully see you in the next one.
Thank you for listening to Leaders in Motion. And if you want to go further, join the Leaders in Motion Academy, our executive program. The first step is simple. Subscribe to our newsletter in the show notes, and you'll get access to our exclusive insights and all the details about the Academy. This podcast is produced by Melanie Hong, who helps leaders and organizations create strategic podcasts. I'm Kevin Hong, and see you next time.